Just pull it towards you.
Okay. I am really excited to be able to introduce the Pacific Chamber Symphony today because I've known about Pacific Chamber Symphony or Pacific Chamber Orchestra, I've got to get it right, for many years. I met Lawrence in Hayward decades ago and was introduced to this orchestra, and they're a unique package. A director who really understands the music, knows how to put together a program that is just exciting and interesting, and then he tells you about it, making it even more exciting and interesting. So it's a wonderful organization, and when I asked them to come and they said yes for today, I was ecstatic. So I'm going to turn it over to Lawrence now and let him tell you about one of his favorite things in the whole world.
So it's a real pleasure to be here, and thank you, Kathy. Classical music. So classical music, has a way of touching our souls real deep inside. And when you're in performance, and we're in gatherings like this, or you're in the concert hall, it's an incredible thing to share that sense of connectedness of your own inner self and the others around you. And that connectedness builds a sense of community, of caring for one another. And that's really what the heart of classical music is about. And I think that, in a way, perhaps Bach does it with some of his transcendental works maybe as well or better than anybody. So here's a little Bach number. See if the reed works. Yeah. Reeds dry out. Those. where did that come from? The clarinet, that is. Yes. You know, I was born in New York City. My dad was born around the turn of the century, around 1901. In that same little area that Copland and Gershwin and Irving Berlin all came from. You see, what happened back in the 1880s when the first wave of European Jews came over from the pogroms, the first ones were the German Jews, and they had money, and they bought theaters. And but in those days, Jews couldn't be on stage. Right? That wasn't allowed. So they owned the theaters. But by the next generation, by the time the second wave came over a little later, and they could. And all the kids, they either sang or played an instrument or danced, and they practiced hours and hours per day. And they'd go and say, hey, my little Johnny, he can really sing, he can really dance, you gotta hear him. So that was the environment that I grew up in. And when I was a little kid, I ran into my dad's music stand, got a big gash on my forehead, knocked out. And what did they do? They didn't take me to the doctor, they took me to the rabbi. And they said to the rabbi, what does this mean? What are we going to do? The rabbi took one look at me and he said, poor kid, he's marked for life, he won't be a Talmud scholar, give him a clarinet. Why a clarinet? Well, you see, clarinet is a weird instrument because it doesn't go up an octave like every other instrument does. You press the register key and it goes up a 12. So that was why he gave me the clarinet. And that actually leads into the next piece we're going to do, which is by Gordon Jacob. Gordon Jacob's an English composer in the 20th century and has an incredible sense of humor. And if anybody was wondering if the Brits would ever leave the European Union, you know, remember we had the vote, they had the vote for it, and we were all taken by surprise. They wouldn't have been taken by surprise if they knew this little march by Gordon Jacob, because very clearly they were very capable of marching in and marching right out. A few years ago, Randy Fisher moved to this area from back east, and I was lucky enough to hook up with him on many different levels. He's done some interesting talks for us and our board, and been part of some of our soirees and things. And he's got a couple of pieces. He's going to play one solo work, and then we're going to do a last duet together. And this is a gypsy kind of thing. Classical music, well, we can do just about anything we want, actually.
It's fun to play other kinds of music. I have a friend who plays country fiddling, and when I tried, he says, well, now you didn't learn to fiddle behind no barn. Which is true, but it's fun anyway. But when I play in concerts at elementary schools, and you know, to illustrate the violin to them. You know, it's kind of an awkward instrument, and that's such a perfect age for starting any instrument. As you know, the life skills that come from learning a musical instrument in focus and what's practiced but long-range planning and the perseverance. And there's a list of 21 research skills on, you know, playing a musical instrument. But because it's an awkward instrument, it's got to be a lot of fun to be worth the work. So this is what I do. One of the things I do in schools to kind of show them it can be fun.
We'll talk more about education later on. We're going to play one last little number, and then we're going to be showing some video clips, and I'm going to talk about things back and forth, so there's a lot more going on. But our last tune is a little jazz tune called Dirty Works, and it's apropos because our April concert is going to feature the jazz violinist who's two-time Grammy winner, Mads Tolling. And in fact, a couple of people came up to me here and said, wow, they've heard Mads play, and he is absolutely incredible, and he is. So he's writing a jazz concerto for violin and chamber orchestra for us to do and premiere with him. So it's going to be quite an amazing treat to have that happen. Yeah, so we're going to do a little dirty work right now.
You don't mind a little street music, do you?
No. Over it.
One, two, 1, 2.
So, you know, actually what I left out of that little story about the music stand, you want to take that away from me there? Because we're going to,
Yes.
it's going to show stuff there. What we left out of that little story was actually when I was running around, I wasn't aimlessly running around, I was conducting. Yeah, that's right, I was conducting. They didn't know it, I knew it. I couldn't say anything because I was too young. Actually, I started the clarinet in 4th grade in music school, but the rest of the story is true. So, let's start off with this first clip. That's not my usual expression.
When we started the Pacific Chamber Orchestra, the original name was Chamber Orchestra of San Leandro, back in 1989. We knew that people were tired of traveling long distances to go to concerts, but wanted to have concerts and wanted to have them close to home, and wanted to have something that was truly professional.
By that time, Kohl had already successfully started
Yeah,
4 other classical music groups,
All those groups still exist, every single one of them.
while doing doctoral work at UCLA in musicology. Kohl was also studying conducting.
So, you know, I wanted to show you this clip, and like I said, I had hair at one time. But there are two very important things about that are really interesting. Is when they said musicology, I did a master's in philosophy, and when I went to UCLA as the very first Chancellor's Fellow, it was to combine music and philosophy. So I was really doing philosophy of music, which is itself an esoteric topic. But I also, the reason I bring that up is because philosophy and my background infuses everything that I do and I think about in terms of programming and education and even in creating community. So that's a very big part of what is my background that I have to offer. The other side is on the study and conducting side. I was incredibly fortunate at UCLA to work with Sam Kroc-Malnick. Some of you may remember Jacob Kroc-Malnick, who was concertmaster of San Francisco Symphony years ago. And Sam and he are twins, identical twins. Sam was the first Kutzewski winner at the Tanglewood Festival and opened up Candide for Bernstein on Broadway and did the original recordings. I mean, Sam was an absolutely phenomenal, great conductor and a deep thinker. And then later on, many years later, I got to work with a fellow by the name of Italian Galfredo Corradetti. And Mr. Corradetti, Maestro, was the only person who was actually both at different times. He was the assistant to Richard Strauss and the only pupil of Arturo Toscanini. So to be able to work with Galfredo and with Sam, with his lineage with Bernstein, was quite something. And what I learned from them, you know, can't sum it. I mean, there's all sorts of technical things, of course. You learn technique and you learn all this, but what you really glean is what the great conductors are really all about. It's about finding that sort of soul in the music, that incredible depth of soul that's in a piece of music, and then finding just the right gesture that evokes that with the orchestra and conveys that to everyone in the hall. And that's when you find that moment. It's an incredible, magical thing that takes place for everybody and brings everybody together in this sense of community that we're all about. Let's go on to track 2.
Today, the Pacific Chamber Orchestra performs in Livermore and Lafayette, attracting classical music lovers with its unique and high-quality musical experience, as well as its convenience and affordability.
I love having local live music in an intimate venue, wonderful programs. It's easy to do.
According to Kohl, the secret to the orchestra's staying power and appeal is being
The chamber orchestra.
rather than a full symphony orchestra.
The chamber orchestra is a very interesting model for an orchestra because it has a tremendous amount of flexibility in terms of the numbers of players that you would have on stage.
Such flexibility means the orchestra can adjust its size and budget with the times. It also allows for exploring more robust musical offerings. You get to pick really cool stuff.
Yeah.
Kohl feels tremendous artistic freedom, reflected in the orchestra's uniquely exciting programming. One concert might feature Baroque selections, requiring less players.
On the other hand, we might be doing a classical or a romantic era work that requires more players, as well as commissioning new works that may require different size ensembles.
Or perhaps even a full chorus. Kohl often chooses pieces not commonly performed.
He's very creative in looking for those interesting gems, maybe forgotten gems, and pairings also. The way he pairs things together, I think, is very unique and interesting.
The idea is that each program has a unique musical thread that connects the works, that there's always a gestalt there.
You've got 3 totally different emotive affections going on. Amazing how he does that.
At every performance, Kohl explains these connections to the audience, believing it isn't enough just to play the music, but also to make concerts informative.
Here's his overture.
I enjoy Maestro Kohl's talk that he gives, so I think it adds another dimension.
It's very enlightening. It enriches the experience.
So a couple of interesting points there. You know, one of the things that was mentioned very early on there was accessibility. being in the community, and that's really important. And a couple of ways that we involve ourselves in the community in a broader sense is we give free tickets to students who haven't been to a classical concert before, and also a block of tickets to low-income seniors as well. Was having Sunday afternoon performances at 2 p.m. That's a time when they can join us. And low-income seniors, they've worked and contributed and been part of our community here all their lives, and they don't have the means, and they should be included in the community. And that's very important to me, and I'm sure to everyone here, that they feel that they're welcome and they can enjoy the best of what we all have to offer. As far as the programming, it's interesting. You can see how the philosophy influences everything. So the concert we have coming up is a great example, Poetry in Motion. Whether you know a lot about classical music or it's your very first time or nearly your first time, whatever, coming, I try to have these concerts have a way that your knowledge can be deepened, or a different perspective, or get first insights. So everybody knows Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, right? And the power of that. But there was another side to Beethoven. That side of Beethoven was the lyrical side, the poetry side, and his slow movement to the incredible piano concerto in G major that we're doing with Steinway artist Natsuki. It's described in the Romantic literature as Orpheus taming the monsters, the Greek sort of stuff and all that sort of thing. I think of it as sort of like the grumpy grandpa and his grown daughter, and the grumpy grandpa's kind of nasty, and she soothes him, and gradually he calms down. And it's incredible, that interplay that goes on there. And then, what's interesting is, like scientists, musicians are scientists. And scientists are artists. I learned that too. And by the way, my first love of philosophy was in the philosophy of science. So I've had numerous conversations with various people from the lab, and love to discuss all the technical and philosophical implications of things that are going on. But anyway, back to this. Schubert felt that the lyrical side, like a good theory with a lot of promise, was something that could be developed. And so Schubert took that lyrical side of Beethoven and he added stuff to it. He stretched out the melodies. He added incredible dissonances, harmonies, and things like that to do things with it. He did all these things, and he changed it from the classical to a more romantic realm. And that's how the musician is also a scientist, because they're working with an art, they're working with concepts, and they're developing them. On the other side, if you're going to have a contrast with lyricism can be humor. And Schubert also idolized Mozart as well. So we're doing the overture to the Abduction from Seraglio, and that was a lot of fun. In Mozart's day, everything Turkish was all the rage in Vienna. Turkish coffee had just been introduced, and everything was kind of going along those lines. In fact, Mozart wrote a Turkish violin concerto, and so we have this Turkish overture with all the noise and jangling of triangle bass drum and all that sort of stuff going on, and you'll hear in Beethoven's concerto and in Schubert, you'll hear humor going on, and that's where the humor comes from. So between lyricism and humor, those are the contrasts that happen within those works, and that gives you an idea how I put a program together and why you should come. Let's go on to the next clip here.
The Pacific Chamber Orchestra boasts top Bay Area professional musicians, many players with the San Francisco Symphony,
the San Francisco Opera, the San Francisco Ballet. They're doing the shows at the Current Theater. They're doing the recordings at Skywalker Ranch.
So what is it that attracts such accomplished musicians to the Pacific Chamber Orchestra?
The music, the repertoire.
It's very intimate, trying to play from our heart.
There's a sense of camaraderie that I enjoy. We listen to each other. We like playing together.
All of which can be summed up in one word.
It's fun.
I really like playing with this orchestra. It's fun.
So this is a good point for me to ask Randy. why he plays with us and why he drove down from Sacramento to be here today with us. So Randy, come on over here where there's a mic and everyone can hear you easily. And what's your take about things?
Well, very much to reinforce what you heard, but an additional aspect beyond President Sam's celebration of teamwork. I love to play with other musicians who love to play together. But I think there's a uniqueness with the Pacific Chamber Orchestra, because we find in our concerts in Livermore, there's also a wonderful sense of community with the audience. And as a result, there's almost a palpable relationship, or there is a palpable relationship across the stage. And I think you can feel it in the enthusiasm of the applause and the warmth of the personal mingling and the wonderful receptions in the lobby afterwards. And I never take this for granted, because in my 40 years playing in orchestras around the country and abroad, and a number of years as Director of Community Engagement for orchestras in Denver and in Virginia, cultivating that sense of community is, the music is a vehicle for something larger, as Lawrence was saying. And I love that he brings that aspect also to the concerts, that we're really trying to involve ourselves with your community and share that after our programs. So thank you for including me.
Thank you, Randy. So speaking of building community, a key aspect of building community has to do with the education programs. So let's look on the next clip and talk about education here.
Kohl and his team are bent on keeping this art form alive for tomorrow by cultivating classical music appreciation with his school music education programs.
Those people that come to classical orchestra concerts do so because they had a positive experience with classical music in their youth. It may not materialize for 30 or 40 years, but that's when it happens.
For Kohl, the impact music education can have on young minds is invaluable, believing kids become better students and perhaps smarter.
Albert Einstein played the violin and loved to do it.
Educators agree.
But when we expose kids to music, it's really good for kids. They perform better in the classroom when music's part of their lives.
So even as Kohl and the Pacific Chamber Orchestra are busy building the next generation of music lovers, they are fully engaged in pleasing today's classical music fans with their special offering.
The greatest music, the greatest players in the area, close to home, and a way of experiencing music that will be enriching and educational, fun as well.
An experience springing from the musical connection once found by a boy with an imaginary baton.
So there's a lot of interesting things to say about education. Randy alluded to a couple of them in terms of teamwork and, you can turn that, in terms of, the discipline of learning a musical instrument and having a musical instrument as a vehicle for self-expression so that one can feel good about oneself, one can see one's own progress, one can see over a long period of time development. Those are all incredible life skills. And also, playing in an ensemble, a youth orchestra or a community orchestra or singing in a community chorus, there's the director. And so, kids learn not only teamwork and learn how to express, but they also learn what it is to follow authority and be part of a group. Those are all incredible things in terms of building life skills to make what will be great community citizens down the road. And so education is very important. Last year we were so incredibly fortunate through grants from the Livermore Valley Education Foundation, LVPAC, and a couple others to be able to go to all 10 elementary schools with our Music Fundamentals program, and we're working on being able to go back again this coming year. There's the principals were all very enthused. Last year we went to 15 schools in 3 different school districts, so we're doing quite a bit there for that. Got one last clip, and this is important, then I'm going to kind of sum things up here.
Are the face of the orchestra He relies on a dedicated team of volunteers behind the scenes for fundraising and publicity.
The Pacific Chamber Orchestra takes a lot of people to make it work.
His Livermore board and La Miranda committee members are committed.
I'm passionate about it, and everybody on the board is passionate about what they do. And that passion and exuberance is contagious.
I love the arts, and I thought this was a great opportunity.
The Pacific Chamber Orchestra is an asset to the community, and as a resident, I feel it's my obligation to maintain those assets.
They are equally inspired by Lawrence Kohl.
He brings a lot of energy, a lot of vibrations. I think Lawrence is the soul of the orchestra.
And for Kohl, the feeling is mutual.
It's just amazing to me and humbling and a motivation to me, the amount of energy, time, dollars everybody puts in to bring this great music to the community.
You know, at the fundamental core, what we're about, in fact, what every performing arts organization here in the area is about building community. We all have maybe our special niche and flavor of how we go about it, but that's what we're about. We're about creating that sense of connectedness and togetherness that you feel when you experience great art in community. And when you experience great art in community, you care. And when people care, they want to help one another. Isn't that what makes a good Rotarian? Helping one another? Isn't your motto service to the community, right? Service above self, right? Service above self. So we're trying to give the groundwork for that, if you will, the cultural environment upon which that sense of service springs. So many of you were in here, you know, or on other boards and involved with other performing arts organizations, and I salute you. And those of you that are not, I suggest that perhaps you might consider becoming involved. It doesn't matter whether it's the Livermore Amador Symphony, it's the Livermore Opera, it's the Tri-Valley Rep, Shakespeare Associations, or Pacific Chamber Orchestra. You know, if you know all the groups, pick your favorite. If you don't know them, try them out, find the one that's kind of your flavor, and you'll find that you'll meet other people who are potential Rotarians. You know, it's interesting to me that wherever I have seen strong arts in the community, I've also seen strong Rotaries. That's really a fascinating thing. And that connection, I think, is something that is very important. So if you're not involved, become involved. If you are involved, I salute you. Thank you.